as we near the 2020 NFL season, I want to talk about some NFL head coaches who I believe are on the hot seat going into this upcoming NFL season. Now, these are coaches who have pressure on them to perform, or their job security is going to be up in the air, right? So the first head coach I want to start with is head coach Dan Quinn of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Dan Quinn has been the head coach of the Falcons for going on 5 seasons now. He has a 43-37 record, and I believe he probably has one of the hottest seats in all of the NFL. Now, a lot of people thought the Atlanta Falcons were going to part ways with Dan Quinn last season, but they brought him back for one more year, which caught a lot of people, including me, by surprise, because a lot of people were thinking that Dan Quinn was going to be on his way out, but some way, somehow, the Atlanta Falcons front office and their ownership decided to bring him back for one more year. Now, when you look at Dan Quinn reminds me a lot of Ron Rivera when it comes to his coaching resume, right? Now, Dan Quinn, this is a guy who has had success in the NFL. He's won playoff games. He's been to the Super Bowl, right? But the production just hasn't been there the last few seasons. Now, the Atlanta Falcons have missed the playoffs the last 2 years, right? Now, Dan Quinn, if he doesn't get this Falcons team to the playoffs this year, I think without a doubt, he'll probably be on his way out. And he has talent, right? He has a really talented, I wouldn't say really talented, but I mean, the Atlanta Falcons are not all that bad of a football team. They have a pretty solid roster. I think the roster is pretty good enough that they could contend or get a wild card spot, right? But here's the downside of that, right? Although he has a pretty good roster, considering the fact that he's on the hot seat, he has to play Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints, and he has to play Tom Brady and Tampa Bay Buccaneers, both those teams twice this season, right? So, I mean, this division isn't really going to be a cakewalk. So, for Dan Quinn, it's unfortunate that the division is as tough as it is, with the Buccaneers and the Saints all looking to be Super Bowl contenders. So, I mean, Dan Quinn has a lot of pressure on him to perform this year, and if he doesn't get this Atlanta Falcons team some way, somehow to at least a wild card spot, without a doubt, I believe he could be the first thing smoking for the Atlanta Falcons at the end of the 2020 NFL season, right? Now, the next head coach is Matt Nagy, right? Now, Matt Nagy has been the Chicago Bears head coach for 2 seasons now. He's going into year 3 now. Now, Matt Nagy is a little bit of a mixed bag, right? Because Matt Nagy, his first year, took Mitchell Trubisky and the Chicago Bears to the playoffs. He won NFL Coach of the Year his first year, right? And everybody thought this Chicago Bears offense last season was going to take a giant step forward, and Mitch Trubisky would take a giant step forward, right? Considering the fact that he was a Pro Bowler the year prior, right? Well, Mitch Trubisky regresses, and the Chicago Bears offense isn't really that good. Now, Matt Nagy don't know how he did it, but this Chicago Bears team was able to win 8 games. So they went 8-8, and they had a really good defense, right? So when you look at Matt Nagy, I don't think his hot seat is like as hot as a guy like Dan Quinn's hot seat is. I think that if he doesn't perform this year, it could be 50-50, right? So if the Chicago Bears are competitive and they go 8-8 or 9-7 and they don't make it to the playoffs, then maybe the Chicago Bears part ways with him, or maybe the Chicago Bears bring him back for just one more season to see what happens, right? But I mean, for when it comes to Matt Nagy, I mean, this team is pretty solid as well. And also, when you look at Matt Nagy, you're in the division that is pretty questionable, right? So the Green Bay Packers, they won the division last year. They went 13-3, but I mean, their schedule is a lot tougher, and, you know, the Green Bay Packers may take a little bit of a step back. Now, the Packers are still going to be a playoff team, but, I mean, I don't think this division is going to be as competitive as it was last season, especially considering the fact that the Minnesota Vikings lost several key starters. Then you got the Detroit Lions, who we don't really know that much about. So, I mean, I think the Chicago Bears do have, when you look at Matt Nagy, I mean, the division isn't all that tough compared to what Dan Quinn has to deal with. So, I mean, Matt Nagy, if he doesn't make it to the playoffs, his job stats will be in question, but I don't think he'll end up being fired like what would happen to Dan Quinn if he ends up missing the playoffs. So I think it could go either way. I think if Matt Nagy does perform this year, he could be fired or he couldn't be fired. Don't really know. It just depends on how the season goes for the Chicago Bears, right? Now, next up, we have Anthony Lynn. Now, Anthony Lynn has been the head coach for the Chargers for 3 years now. He has a 26-22 record, and he's in the same category as Matt Nagy. He's in a little bit of in between, right? So Anthony Lynn took the LA Chargers to the playoffs a few seasons back, and last season, everybody, including myself, felt that this LA Chargers team was going to be a Super Bowl contender, right? Well, they were probably the most disappointing team in the NFL last year. They didn't even come close to even making the playoffs. So, I mean, it was really disappointing what the LA Chargers did last year. When you look at the LA Chargers, I mean, this team from a talent standpoint is really good, right? So the defense, in my opinion, is going to end up being one of the best defenses in football this upcoming NFL season. And the offense, regardless who the quarterback is, Justin Herbert or Tyrod Taylor, both of those guys should be able to come in and have success right away, because you got Keenan Allen, you got Mike Williams, you got Austin Eckler in the backfield, you got a pretty decent offensive line. So, I mean, this is a team that without a doubt should make the playoffs, but the thing is, he's in a really competitive division, and that AFC West division, the AFC West division is no joke. You got the Raiders, who are a little bit of a mixed bag. You got Kansas City, who we already know is going to be a threat. And you got the Denver Broncos, who are probably the biggest sleeper team going into this upcoming NFL season. So where do the Chargers with Anthony Lynn fits in that fold, right? So, I mean, Anthony Lynn, he has the team. He has the talent to make it to the playoffs. The thing is, can he just put it together? Now, I don't think if he misses the playoffs this year, the LA Chargers are going to part ways with him again. Or maybe they do, right? So, I mean, you don't really know. It's a little bit of a 50-50 chance depending on how the season goes, right? Same thing with Matt Nagy. Now, next up, we have my guy, Big Matt Patricia. Now, Matt Patricia was brought in after the Detroit Lions fired Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell was coming off of 2 back-to-back 9-7 seasons, and Jim Caldwell got fired because 9-7, quote-quote, wasn't good enough for the Detroit Lions. So, when you listen to those statements, 9-7 not being good enough, you think the Lions, when they bring in a new head coach, that the level of expectation will rise, right? So 10 wins or better was the expectation for Matt Patricia coming in, and Matt Patricia has not lived up to those expectations. I mean, he hasn't won that many games. He went, what, 3? He only won 3 games last year and had 1 tie. So, I mean, listen, Matt Patricia, that hot seat is really, really hot right now. His hot seat may be hotter than Dan Quinn's. If Matt Patricia and this Detroit Lions team isn't even competitive at week 12, he may get fired before the season even ends. So, I mean, he has a lot of pressure on him to produce this year. And also, the general manager for the Detroit Lions, Bob Quinn, also has some pressure on him to produce as well, because if Matt Patricia doesn't perform, then his job may be up in the air as well after this upcoming NFL season. And when you look at the Lions, out of all the coaches on this list that are on the hot seat, the Detroit Lions have the most talented roster than any coach in this hot seat. So Matt Patricia has a really good roster. You got a good offense, especially with Matthew Stafford coming back fully healthy. The defense should be more improved compared to what it was last year. So really, if the Detroit Lions don't make it to the playoffs this year, it's all strictly based on Matt Patricia just not being a good coach. Because, I mean, the Detroit Lions have a really good roster, so it really shouldn't be no reason why they can't win the division, and really no reason why they can't make it to the playoffs. Now, they don't have to win the division, of course, but they should make it to the playoffs this year. So next up, we have Adam Gase. Now, Adam Gase, his job, when it comes to him being on the higher end of the spectrum, when it comes to being on the hot seat, I want to put him in the warm category. I want to say that it's low, it's not middle, it's not high, it's low, right? Because the New York Jets, if the Jets look at Adam Gase's performance after this season, the Jets don't really do all that well. They could look at Adam Gase and just look at him and just be like, you know what, you're not the guy, we're just going to go ahead and bail on you, right? Now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, JT, this will only be like his second year for the New York Jets. You got to give him time to implement his system. Listen, you got Sam Darnold. You have a really improved offense, and the defense should be pretty improved as well. You're looking at a division in the AFC East that really just has the Buffalo Bills there, and everybody else is just, So for when you look at the New York Jets, I mean, Adam Gase, I don't think the hot seat is like in the middle, like a Matt Nagy. I don't think his hot seat is high, but I'm just saying if the New York Jets don't really perform all that well this season, maybe the New York Jets ownership could give him the eyeball. So next up, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars head coach Doug Marrone. Now, Doug Marrone has been a head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars for a few seasons now. He's 22-28 as a coach, and his hot seat is just as hot as Matt Patricia and Dan Quinn's. Now, I don't know for the life of me why Sean Khan decided to bring him back, even though I like Doug Marrone. But I feel Doug Marrone had to take over a team basically last year that just had all kinds of locker room issues, and not due to him, it was due to the front office. Because when you talk to any former Jacksonville Jaguar player, Jalen Ramsey included, he said that he loved playing for Doug Marrone. Doug Marrone was not the problem. The problem was the front office, and the front office of the Jacksonville Jaguars messed up the chemistry of the whole entire locker room. So basically, the Jacksonville Jaguars this offseason, or during the middle of the season, they had to ship a lot of guys out, and they had to, you know, have a culture change a little bit. So I mean, Doug Marrone probably has the least talented team out of all the coaches on the hot seat. But I mean, I don't think the Jacksonville Jaguars, if the Jacksonville Jaguars win less than 6 games, then you have to part ways with Doug Marrone. Now, I don't know why Sean Khan chose not to fire him. That's beyond my pay grade. But I mean, he decided to bring him back for some reason for one more year. So I'm really interested in seeing what he's looking at Doug Marrone this year. And then the last guy we have on this list, we have Bill O'Brien. Now, Bill O'Brien is interesting, right? Because Bill O'Brien is on the hot seat based on his status as the general manager, right? So this guy made all these big trades and things like that. He shipped off DeAndre Hopkins. So if he doesn't perform, then the Houston Texans ownership, they could be looking at him in a really questionable standpoint, right? And even though he has performed, I look at him like a Chip Kelly, right? So Chip Kelly was performing very well. He got that job. Well, he got promoted to head coach and GM. He made all these offseason trades, and he flopped the following season and got fired. So, I mean, maybe that could happen to Bill O'Brien, you know? So, I mean, if the Houston Texans don't make it to the playoffs this year, I think Houston may look to part ways with Bill O'Brien. Now, I have him in the same category as Adam Gase. I don't think his job is like in the middle, or I don't think his job is like in the super hot seat with the Dan Quinn and the Matt Patricia of the world. But I'm just saying, if Houston doesn't make it to the playoffs, then maybe he could get the eyeball as well. So, these are my NFL head coaches that are on the hot seat going into the 2020 NFL season. Let me know what you guys think about it down in the comment section down below. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and content, and thanks for watching.